Alright, so according to David Hogg, that anti-gun guy who will be attending Harvard soon, quote, "We are living in a post-genocide society. So long as we refuse to acknowledge the multiple genocides those that have come before us have committed, we are doomed to keep doing so." What? Dude, punctuation, use it. I had a really tough time deciphering this code, but after reading through it and having someone explain what they thought he meant, I believe he's trying to say, given that his modus operandi is gun control, that it was guns that caused genocides in the past and we need to rid ourselves of guns, otherwise we will be doomed to repeat it. Now, this isn't even true. You had the Holodomor, which was the man-made famine in Ukraine courtesy of Stalin, and that killed roughly 3 to 7 million people. And Genghis Khan killed roughly 40 million people using no guns to my knowledge in around 1206 to 1227 AD. By the way, Genghis Khan was not his real name. That was more of a title. Fun fact. But anyway, I get what David Hogg is getting at here. If, of course, my interpretation of his tweet is correct. But it's completely ridiculous if this is what he means, and judging by many of his past comments, I would not be surprised if this was the point he was attempting to make. So, there have been genocides committed against people in the past with guns. This is true. But what do you think is the last thing that those committing the genocide wanted their intended victims to have? That would be guns, of course. If you're trying to commit genocide, the absolute last thing you want is for the population to be armed. That really throws the whole genocide plan into a spin. It makes it exponentially more difficult to kill those who can shoot back. It's not impossible, but it's a serious complication when it comes to the business of mass murdering people. So if David Hogg is concerned about genocide, which by the way has largely been committed by governments throughout history, not private citizens owning guns, if he's really concerned about genocide by gun, well, ironically, he should be completely in favor of those private citizens being armed if they so choose. Does he really believe that the ordinary citizen in North Korea, who are barred from having any sort of firearm, and it's also punishable by death, does he really think that the DPRK would be in the state it is today if the dear leader had an armed populace to deal with? I don't think so. Does he really think that the Holocaust would have been made better or worse if the Jewish citizens of Germany didn't have their guns taken away from them? I have a feeling it, at the very least, would have been made a bit more difficult to exterminate people who were able to shoot back. What seems to be the case here is that David Hogg is incapable of both critical thinking and using punctuation. Genocides that have occurred in the past century, not all of them, but the vast majority of them, began with disarming the population. You've got the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany disarmed the Jewish population, you have Turkey, you have China, you have Guatemala, you have Uganda, you have Cambodia, etc., etc. Now, I would ask David Hogg, if we disarm the population, does that make everyone more peaceful? Does it limit the probability that violence and homicide increases? I would say no, but a much more important question to ask is, if we disarm the population, do you think that will incentivize the government to become more peaceful? Think about our government 50 years from now. We have no idea who will be in power. Do you think disarming the population will increase or decrease the likelihood that government becomes more benevolent if people aren't falling in line with no firearms and no defense? Does that motivate the government to become more lenient, or would that give them a ripe situation to force people to do what they want no matter what? Well, if history tells us anything, it tells us that a disarmed population is a defenseless population, and governments don't have a great track record of being benevolent to a disarmed, defenseless, and perhaps restless population. History books are filled with bloodbaths in countries that wanted to diminish the right of the citizen to defend themselves. Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, share, and all that jazz, and take it easy.